Okay, so welcome to Kerry from Guide Dogs. We're going to have a look through some of your resources that are available to everyone today. So I'll hand straight over to you, and thank you for being here with us today. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Good afternoon, everybody. So to start with, thank you very much for inviting me along to this afternoon. My name is Kerry Kernan, and I have a very convoluted job title, which is the National Operations Manager for the Children and Young People and Family Service here at Guide Dogs. So what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to share my screen, and hopefully we will be able to go through the presentation. Would somebody just be able to tell me whether that's come up for you?
Yep, that's there.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. So as I say, I work for Guide Dogs within the Children and Young People and Families Service, and my role is to oversee a number of those services as the operations manager. Now, the main part of what I'm going to do this afternoon with you is talk to you about a very particular project that we run, which is called Tech for All. Some of you may be familiar with it, and actually it's going to grow a little bit this year, so it's a really lovely opportunity for me to come along and talk to you about that this afternoon. But I thought what might be really useful is just to set that within the context really of where it sits in our services and how it works alongside some of our other children, young people and families services as well. So within our sector, we are the largest provider of services for children with a visual impairment. We do have, we're very fortunate to have a very, very large team of specialists across many dedicated areas. And so the first area that I'll just briefly touch on today is that of our education team. So our education team are a telephone advisory service. The team themselves are made up of a combination of qualified teachers of children with visual impairment, but also SENCOs as well across the different age ranges. Within education, we would provide advice on all education matters really. So that could range from things like transition, school placement, admissions, obviously education, healthcare plans. And that team will work with families, providing advice and guidance on anything that goes up to sort of pre-tribunal. We don't go any further than that. But it's meant to be a value-added service. Obviously, you know, local authorities have that obligation to work with children as well, and we certainly don't come in to step on anybody's toes there. It's just really to say, is there anything else that, you know, we might be able to help? The next service is our habilitation service. So we do have a very large team of trained habilitation specialists all over the UK. They will focus on independent living skills, working with families and schools to ensure that children can access the world around them, and looking at what skills those children need to develop in order to make sure that those boundaries are basically just removed. We then have our family support service, and our family support service is quite wide-reaching really. So we will work with families at the point of very early diagnosis, and we do have an early diagnosis pathway. We will have the ability to provide advice on benefits that might be available to them, on certification. We run online support groups for our families. We just last year started running a very particular online support group for dads, so that there was a dad support network that was put into place. We also, as you can see from the slide there, have a hospital outreach programme that comes out of family support as well. And so this is where we're working as ECLOs, iClinic liaison officers, within those clinical settings, actually just offering support to families within that particular context, and also signposting. And sometimes that might be signposting to some of our guide dog services, but just as much it might be signposting to other agencies as well. We then have our customised books. which is always a lovely service to talk about. Customised Books is our large print publishing service. And what we are able to do, we have an online shop, so families can become a member. The membership is absolutely free, but then they get access to our online shop, and within that there's about 4,500 titles that we have in there at the moment. And the families can actually select the book. They can identify what font they would like that produced in, what size font they would like. If there's a preference on the colour paper it's to be printed on, then that can be selected as well as the spacing within the page as well. And so it's very much a tailored service. What's really fantastic about this service, though, is that Guide Dogs massively subsidise this. And so regardless of how many volumes that book might actually take to be printed and then obviously get sent out to the families, the cost is only the retail price, the recommended retail price. And so it means that children can have the same Harry Potter book that all of their friends are reading at the time, and they can be reading that alongside. So it's a really lovely service in Customised Books. The next one is family events. So we have a fantastic events team who will run events all over the UK for our families, and really those events are designed, I suppose, really to be twofold. They're very much about bringing families together who maybe have some shared experiences and really developing that peer support network. But it's also about giving families just a fantastic day out and perhaps a little bit of respite. It's a day that they've not had to organise. We've done the organisation for them. Within each of our days, we try to have some kind of very unique sensory experience as well. And we work with a lot of venues that we go to try to put something into place for our families that maybe the general public don't have access to. So it's a little bit of a treat. So this time next week, I will be heading off to North Wales, and at some point over those few days, you would find me feeding sea lions with some children on that particular event. So really, really lovely way of bringing families together. The other thing that events are really fantastic for, though, is it's a really great way of showcasing a lot of our services. And so the technology service that I'm about to talk about in a few moments, we go to the events with all of our technology demonstration kit. It's a really fabulous way for families to actually have a play with some of those devices, have a conversation with somebody, see actually how they work before they perhaps consider whether or not that's an appropriate device for them. The other thing that we do through family events is that we also run a family weekend once a year. We're hoping to look at bringing in a second one, but at the moment we do it once a year, and that is a way of us working with our families who have just had a very recent and early diagnosis. And we run a series of workshops through that particular weekend for families. We have a creche that comes on so that families, again, can focus on the workshops, knowing that their children are well cared for. And then we have a whole range of different fun activities as well that run alongside those workshops. So again, just a really lovely service to oversee. So before I go into technology, the last service to talk about there is the canine services, which obviously we're very well known for. But within children, young people and families, there are two main aspects to that, really. So we do have our young people's guide dog service, so very much like the guide dog service that people would be familiar with, but obviously very much focused on working with young people. But more commonly across children, young people and families, we have the buddy dog service. And if anybody's not familiar with the buddy dog service, again, it's just a really wonderful experience to kind of be a part of. Our buddy dogs are our dogs that may not necessarily have gone through to be a guide dog. They may not have necessarily hit all of the standards that they need to be a working guide dog, because obviously that is a very, very high standard. but they would be assessed and would be considered to be appropriate for a buddy dog, which essentially is a way of developing independence within young people. So we've had some young people that have had buddy dogs who have suddenly described having the confidence to go out a little bit more, having the confidence to talk to people about their visual impairment, because the buddy dog is a bit of an icebreaker. And so the buddy dog service, again, is just a really fantastic service. But the big service that I'm here to talk about this afternoon is technology. And technology, what I wanted to do there was just to give you a context and a flavour really of all of our children's services, because technology will work in partnership, very much in partnership with all of those other services there. I mean, you've heard me talk about how technology will go along and do demonstrations at events. It will work very closely with our habilitation specialists. Our technology team will also work very closely alongside our education team. So it's very much a sort of a joined up approach in terms of all of our children, young people's and family services. Okay, so within technology, so my technology team have two main aspects to their role, really. One is the idea of tech for all, which I'll talk about in just a second. And then the other side of their work is very much the information, advice and guidance. And you'll see how that kind of feeds through all of this as I go through the next few slides. So what is Tech for All? Well, it's a service that provides free accessible technology to all children with a vision impairment aged 3 to 18 in the UK to use outside of school. And the reason that we say that is because, again, we know local authorities obviously have their work, their obligations to provide for children through their education system. So we don't ever really want to get into a situation where obviously we're stepping on the toes of that. So this is very much to use outside of school. And for us as an organisation, it was something that really came to light for us through the pandemic, because obviously lots of people were feeling very isolated, and we know that for people with a vision impairment, that was a really big, significant concern. And so this was something that we started to look at in terms of, well, what can we do to keep people connected, really? Now, up until this year, Tech for All has solely been focused on iPads, but this year we're using the Tech for All title, and we're using it to basically become the umbrella term for all of our grants programme. In the past, we have done technology grants as well, but we really like the idea that actually Tech for All now encompasses all of it. So iPad's very much still a big part of this offer, but also other forms of assistive technology such as laptops with Zoom text, Braille notes, Connect and Learns. There's a range of different devices that would form part of this. And what we tend to have is we have a range of packages of our most commonly asked for devices, but there's also the opportunity for families to if none of those things they feel suits their needs, then they can get in touch with us, and there's still the opportunity for us to look at something that perhaps might be more tailored specifically to their needs. Within the Tech for All package or umbrella, we also have sensory equipment packages as well, and so many of our habilitation specialists would be working with some of our children, and they may make some recommendations to families about particular pieces of a sensory equipment, sensory nature, that would be particularly beneficial to them. And so again, families can come through Tech for All, they can look at the sensory packages that we have, and they can see if one of those packages would be really useful in terms of working with their child and their development. As I said, we do have the information, advice and guidance aspect to the service as well, and so we do offer specialist advice on the best equipment to support the child or the young person. Quite often families will look at our packages and they'll look fantastic, but they won't necessarily know which one would be best for them, and so we do offer that advice in terms of just really getting to know the family, getting to know the needs of the child, and then obviously we're in a position to be able to make that best judgment, really. And then we also have digital learning resources, which really help people harness those accessibility components of their iPad, but also of their other accessible devices as well. And that's through our tech hub. And actually, I'm just going to talk about that a little bit more on one of the other slides. So why did we create Tech for All? Well, as I said, it really came out of the pandemic, really, for us, and some of the concerns that we were facing with many of our service users. But also that we know there's a whole load of research out there that sort of justifies the need for this. So every 6 minutes in the UK, one more person loses their sight. We have 28,000 children under the age of 18 who currently are blind or partially sighted in the UK. We knew from our own insight that in 2020, our range of services, despite the breadth of them, we were still only reaching somewhere around 4% of that group of people, and we knew desperately that we had to reach more. We also knew from our research that technology can completely transform the ability of children with sight loss to live independently and well. I mean, it is an absolute life changer, and the feedback that we get from everybody that benefits from Tech for All just constantly reinforces that for us. In 2021, we piloted a new service, which was the start of Tech for All, which provided free accessible technology to all children with a visual impairment between the ages of 3 to 18, and as I say, within the UK and to use outside of school. So it's very much focusing on supporting learning outside of school, supporting independence, and really looking at that kind of social inclusion side of development as well. So the impact of it, obviously we were very interested in that, and the impact of it. So we know now that we've reached about 30% of children and young people with a vision impairment in the UK, so a significant difference. And it has to be said as well that about the knock-on to some of those other services that I was talking about, and this is why it's so important that technology does have that working relationship with those other services, because not only did we reach 30% of that group of people in terms of being able to assist them with their technology needs, but actually for the vast majority of those people, they then also learnt about many of those other services that they were unaware of before. So, for example, we recently ran a family event at Cadbury's World, and we just had completely new families. It was a special event that we did specially for Tech for All families, and all of those people had said, "Oh my goodness, I just didn't realise that we had this opportunity to meet other families before we had this information." And so the impact is not only putting that device in the hands of somebody and obviously giving them the ability to access the external world in a far more efficient way, but it's also opening up all those other avenues of support for the children and also for the families. So our impact survey scores discovered the following results after receiving the service compared to our pre-service levels. So in terms of their autonomy, people said that it was 18% higher. In terms of their engagement, sort of with the outside world, really, 13% higher. In terms of their sociability, 5% higher. But also really lovely to see in terms of their worry levels about just their everyday experiences, there was a 9% drop in that. So not only have we got that impact in terms of the number of people we've been able to reach, but also we're starting to really see the impact in terms of the difference it makes on people's lives. So I mentioned a few moments ago that we had a whole range of learning resources as well. So everybody that receives an iPad from us is provided with what we call our learning journey, but the resources that are part of that learning journey are actually available on our website for absolutely everybody to access and enjoy as well. And at the moment, obviously, they're very iOS focused because of the iPad offer, but some of those learning modules are literally how to set up your iPad, how to use your iPad, how to get the best out of the accessibility features of the iPad, how to use the parental controls, screen time and how to work with that, and then some of the apps that we feel would be of particular interest as well. So there are modules on our tech hub that actually take everybody through how to basically get to grips with all of those areas. However, we also know that not everybody has an iPad, and as we say, you know, those modules are available to everybody. So we know some people will be out there that perhaps have Android-based devices, and so what we're looking to do throughout 2023 now is also to start to provide that same level of support for accessibility advice for Android devices. And then the Tech Hub will continue to grow throughout 2023, where we'll be looking at putting on training modules that basically link to all of the other assistive technology devices that we provide through Tech for All. So you've heard an awful lot from me there about what it is that we do, but I always think there is nothing more important than actually hearing from the voice of a service user, of a client themselves. So this was a piece of feedback that was sent in to us after somebody received their iPad, and it was written as a really lovely article. I've just pulled a few bits of it out. So it says, since it's Accessibility Awareness Day, in this article, I will be telling you why I use an iPad. Apple have great accessibility software, but a sighted Apple worker wouldn't explain all of the details because they have sight. Why should it be up to someone who is sighted to tell you about how it works, and not someone who has been in a similar situation to you and understands the struggle of technology? Here is the point of view of an iPad from someone who is blind for someone who is blind or visually impaired. For background information, I'm Daisy. I am 13 years old. I have no vision and I'm an iPad user. My personal iPad was fundraised by Guide Dogs. Without my iPad, it would add so many unnecessary boundaries. Why am I spending the time to tell you about the accessible features of an iPad? I went through the struggle of figuring out what technology I work best with. Everyone's different, so I accept that some people may find alternative devices they work better with, and I accept some blind or visually impaired people may not like the iPad, but I'm going to share the facts I have learnt and the pros of an iPad. I love that the iPad is touchscreen. This allows us to explore the screen by touch whilst listening to VoiceOver read out what we are finding. Compared to a laptop, the touchscreen is a massive help. The iPad is so much smaller than the typical laptop, which makes it so much more convenient. Another iPad hack I find helpful is using a wireless Bluetooth keyboard. With it being wireless, it means less hassle. What's the point in connecting a keyboard with a wire when you can connect it through Bluetooth? Spoken like a true 13-year-old. A keyboard allows a blind or visually impaired person to dictate what they want to note take without having to rely on a brailler or someone else scribing. But a blind person won't be able to see the letters, you say. Well, most people take on learning to touch type if they have a visual impairment, so it's all done on muscle memory, not vision. When we type on a keyboard onto a Word document, VoiceOver will tell us what letter we are pressing anyway. Other than work, we can also listen to music, listen to audiobooks, and we can have so many adaptive apps on an iPad which wouldn't have been available to us if we were using a laptop. Another point would be that laptop screen readers tend to cost extra most of the time, which is really unfair since it's an essential when we can't see the screen. I personally find laptop screen readers really hard to learn, and with the laptop not being touchscreen, it makes it even harder to figure out. VoiceOver on iPads is easy and free. This is my opinion. I'm not saying everyone who is blind or visually impaired agrees, but just know that there will be something out there that works for you if something isn't working. It just takes time. I find iPads the most accessible, but not one item of technology works for all visually impaired people. So I really love that piece of work. I just think that's an incredible piece of work from somebody so young, but it really shows the impact I feel that particular device has on that person's life, and the fact that they're able to be so reflective really in terms of actually what works for them and what doesn't, and to justify the reasons for that, I just think is phenomenal. Yeah, really lovely piece of feedback there. So that really, in a nutshell, is our Tech for All service, as I say, sat within the wider family of our CYPF services. If anybody is interested in how to access any of our services, then I've just popped onto the slide here the 3 ways that that can be done. So we do have a telephone service, which is our guideline. So the number for that is there. We also have an email address, so any queries can be sent into information@guidedogs.org.uk, but equally our website has a whole range of information about all of our different services. If you have any families that you would like to refer, then obviously they can contact us in any of those particular ways. And if you have anybody that is interested in the Tech for All service, we are just getting ourselves ready to launch it for 2023, but until it's launched, we do have the facility on our website for families to actually just express an interest, so they will join a waiting list, and then obviously once we're ready to launch, we'll start to work our way through that. But I'm very happy to answer any questions. Mary, I might be in your hands here because I can't actually see the chat whilst I'm sharing.
Yeah, that's fine. I haven't seen anything pop up. Oh no, wait, there's something here. Okay, so Amy says she's got to leave for another meeting that starts at 4. So thanks, Amy. Does anyone have a question? You feel free to unmute yourselves and ask away if you do.
Yeah, I've got one.
Yeah.
A family I work with, the parents are EAL and their English is not very strong. How would they be able to access your services?
I think in the first instance that if you're working with that particular family, if you contact Guideline, then we do have the facility to be able to put support into place there. But obviously it's just that initial call so that we know what support would be needed. Equally, that could be done through the email address as well, Maureen.
Thank you.
I was just wondering actually as well, is there a limit to the number of applicants that you can have each year, or is it unlimited?
So I would love to say unlimited, but as with every organisation, we have a budget. So yes, we do have a number on our devices. So last year, for example, it was 2,500 iPads, and then with the grants, it works out slightly differently because obviously it really depends on how many devices and what type of devices people require. We're yet to have the amount confirmed for this year, which is why we're encouraging people really just to express their interest, because then we'll be able to start working through that list.
And how does the process work? Is it a first come first serve basis, or?
In theory, yes, but there is criteria that people have to be able to meet. So obviously, we do need to make sure that everybody that applies can meet that criteria before obviously we would go through with issuing the device. But yes, I mean, essentially we do. It's as quickly as people can get to us is the key, really.
Wonderful. Well, thank you ever so much. Are there any other questions from anyone? No, I think all quiet.
Lovely.
Thank you. That was really, really lovely to hear about all of the amazing things that guide dogs do. So thank you very, very much for that. And bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. I'll stop recording there and